All right. Good morning, everybody. How are we? Hope everybody is doing well. I know I'm a minute early here, so we'll give people a chance to check out uh, or to check in, rather. So, today is my first live that I've done in several months, and I am going to share with you a lot of really cool stuff today. And if you stay till the end, you're going to get a couple of really cool bonus packs, as I call it, for sticking around. And the goal today is to share with you, to give you some value, things that you can do in your workplace or do with yourself. But ultimately, it is to get you to a place where you either learn yourself or learn about your employees, learn about your teams. And so as we go ahead and get started, today is really truly about uh, teaching organizations how to stop hiring for skills and firing for behaviors. I say this at least 3 or 4 times a week to my clients or to individuals that I'm having conversations with. And all too often, we are looking for the keywords on resumes and looking for people that fit a certain fit in a box. And really, what I'm trying to help organizations see is that look, we often find people for skills, but we don't do a lot in the interview for behaviors. And what I often find is like, well, Clegg, I interview, I have 3 to 5 questions that are behavioral based questions. That's not really getting it. And we know that because of retention numbers across the organizations in the US. And it's clear that we're not spending enough time on behaviors. So my goal today is really truly to help show you all a system that I use. I've been using it. Uh, Part of it, I've been using it for 8 years. But the LeaderLens, which I'm really excited to share with you guys, and hopefully you'll see that it's going to add you tremendous value. You're going to be able to get a glimpse into some things that we're going to talk about today, and it's going to all come full circle and make sense. But if you're new or you and I haven't had a chance to speak before, QR code in the upper right hand corner. If you want to hear and see more information, that is will get you on my newsletter list, and which right now I think goes out to about 8,000 people, plus 30,000 followers on LinkedIn. And now I'm starting to put this on Medium. And I'm really excited to get this going. My goal is to go live at 11 a.m. Eastern on most Fridays. So if you're here in the Carolinas, in the Charlotte area where I am, hello, we're all hunkering down, getting ready for a snowstorm, which we haven't had a measurable snow here in South Charlotte since I believe it was 2014. It's the last time we had at least 5 or 6 inches. So with all that being said, let's go ahead and get started. What you're seeing on your screen is what I call the Leader Lens. And the Leader Lens is a framework that really truly becomes a roadmap for you and your organization. And there are several things that I'll show you that goes into this, but let's talk about why this is important. And I saw this from Marshall Goldsmith, who, for those of you who don't know, he's kind of one of those celebrity coaches. He works with powerful C-suites or CEOs, and he wrote the book "What Got You Here Won't Get You There." And I just love following some of his content. And he had this listed the other day: the axe forgets, but the tree remembers. So why is that relevant for what we're talking about today? In many cases, think about it this way: the axe is the leader, the tree are us as employees. And so if we're going to cut down trees, the impact that we have, the axe's job is just to continue to move from tree to tree to tree. Well, as a tree, there's a lot of things that we're trying to do, right? And so what this means is, as a leader, we oftentimes have negative impacts on our employees, on our people, on our families and friends, and we don't even realize it. And that could be a ton. It could be the words we use. It could be our tone, which, if my wife's watching, it used to get me in trouble early in our marriage, and body language. So these are things that all are part of the communication that employees pay close attention to, but us as leaders, we may not pay attention to. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that. So When I saw this, I said, man, this is perfect. It goes right into some of the things that we're going to talk about. And self-awareness is a big deal. But I said this to Meg, my marketing person, and she's an amazing partner over at Toth Shop. And I said, I was like, I'm really trying to help organizations. I'm really trying to help organizations understand that leaders really aren't self-aware. And I'll show you some data on that in a second. But they're not. Leaders are not self-aware. Now, most of us believe we're self-aware because of some things I'll share with you in a second. But I said, how do you capture the attention of people from a marketing perspective to share with them, the audience, potential clients? How do you share with them self-awareness and show that that is a challenge for most people when everybody believes that they're self-aware? And so it was a really good idea by her. And she said, what if this is the new executive presence? Because when I was growing up, I can remember like my first several weeks, months of work and just seeing some people in the organization that I was like, I want to be like them. They dressed well, they spoke well. Usually they drove nice cars. They had this just presence, this aura about them. And I was like, I want to be them one day. And so when you look at that, like, do we really pay attention to those things? Not to say that having charisma and confidence, those things aren't important, because I think they are. But is that really why we promote people today? I believe some organizations still do that. But generally speaking, no, we're looking for other things. And so in my organization and things that I'm looking to build out, it really is about executive presence, which is the impact that we leave on others around us. Think about the axe and the tree again. So in 20 plus years, and I like to leave it at 20 years, but it is 20 plus, and that makes me old. But there are two primary things that I talk to organizations about every single day: leader self-awareness and psychological safety. Self-awareness, understanding your impact, right? That executive presence that we just talked about. Understanding your impact and in a safe environment. And I'm not talking about safe spaces and rooms and all of those buzzwords and things that could be triggering for some people. I'm talking about the ability to say what you mean inside of organizations, to bring challenges to the forefront. Those are the things that require psychological safety. Am I free to speak up if I've made a mistake? Or am I going to get blasted publicly by the boss, right? If I'm going to get blasted publicly by the boss, and by the way, I know there are a lot of organizations and there are people that are watching right now that, what's the word I would say, have a bad boss. And if you're watching the replay, and I know some of you that can't make it today are going to watch this replay, I'm talking to you. And it's sad, because we'll talk about this, but if I had 30 seconds to diagnose a culture in any organization, I'd ask one question: where does bad news travel? Does it travel horizontally, which means through people, right? Through peers, stay in the hallways, or does it travel vertically up to the key decision makers? If it travels horizontally, chances are you do not have a psychologically safe environment, and that likely means that your leaders do not have self-awareness. So let's dive in. We're talking about emotional intelligence when we talk about self-awareness, but there's really two areas that I focus on: self-awareness and self-regulation. I don't spend a ton of time in empathy, social skills, and motivation. Those are on a case-by-case basis. But I have found that the two things that matter the most from a leader perspective and a leader appearance in that presence are those two: self-awareness and self-regulation. So why do I talk about self-regulation? And let me move my face here so you can see this. 95% of leaders believe that they have high self-awareness. And the funny thing is, when we look at this, when I go speak to organizations, I always say, hey, by show of hands, who considers themselves to be self-aware? Overwhelming majority of the room, roughly 90% or more, raise their hands. And there's always a couple people that go, well, yeah. And why is that important? Well, because only 10 to 15% actually have it. And so when I look at this as as an organization, when I think through like how do leaders show up, how is their presence? Let me get this out of the way. There we go. Whoop, get the wrong thing. I was trying to move this out of the way, but I'll try this later. But in reality, only 10 to 15% actually have it. And that's from Dr. Tasha Eurich. She did a study of a couple thousand leaders. And it's a fascinating study. But and why is this? And what I've found is this. There are two types of self-awareness. First is the internal self-awareness, okay? And internal self-awareness, really, this is where most of us believe that we are self-aware. Hey, I'm introspective, I'm reflective. I know what my strengths and my weaknesses are. I think I know my blind spots. That's internal self-awareness, which many of us do have. And if you are a leader and you've gotten to and had any level of success, chances are that you are internally self-aware. But that's what fools most leaders, is that that's what they believe is fully self-awareness. Well, no, there's a second part of self-awareness, which is the external self-awareness. And this is the perspective and the perception of how we show up to other people. This is the impact. This is the executive presence that I was referring to. This is the new executive presence, because we all know, or we should know, and if you don't, listen up, your reputation walks in a room well before you do. If you have a meeting with people in your team or clients or people that you've worked with before, and you have experiences and they have experiences with you, they already have an image of you, right? They have an idea of the type of person you are, which chances are you don't know what that information is. And the reason for that is we don't ask. So the part of 95% thinking that they have self-awareness and only 10 to 15% actually do have a level of high self-awareness, that comes down to external self-awareness. And it's very easy to see when you start looking for it. Because the cool thing is we can tell ourselves internally, right? The internal self-awareness, we can tell ourselves the things that we think about ourselves. But unless we ask other people, we can't possibly have an understanding of our impact on other people. And so whether you're married with a spouse, a significant other, like ask your kids, ask how they show up, ask how you show up to them rather. So let's keep trucking. So I'd mentioned to you one of the things that, from my perspective, that are tools that I help organizations use. Now, PDP is an awesome tool. I've been using it for 8 years. And by the way, when I was in corporate America, I've used Predictive Index, I've used Cultural Index, I've used Myers-Briggs, Enneagram, Wonderlic. There are more, DISC. I've used a lot of them. And I've always had a tendency to really love training and knowledge and human behaviors. But when I found PDP 8 years ago, it's the only one that I use. One, because it's extremely accurate. And I put a little down in the right-hand corner here. If you want to geek out on the science behind PDP, like go ahead and click that little QR code down on the bottom right, just to learn all about it. The science is second to none. And there's really two things that we measure. There's a pro scan, which I'm going to show you in a second, which is the individual. And then there's a team scan, which you PDP a bunch of people on the team, and then you get the team version and how the team fits together. And so then we put together a team lens, which is very similar to the leader lens, where the leader lens is for the individual, the team lens is for the team. And so it's phenomenal information, and I'll share with you what this looks like. So from a PDP perspective, and see if we can make this a little bigger. From a PDP perspective, there's 3 areas that we measure. There's the natural basics of, this is how God built you. I call it the blue environment. There's the red environment, which is our priority or when we're stressed environment. And by the way, this is a copy of my PDP from 3 years ago. And then there's the green, which is the outward self, which is how other people see me. And so those are the 3 areas, but I spend an overwhelming majority of my time, 90% of my time, on the blue, the basic natural self, because this is where predictive behaviors come in. And the red, I spend roughly 10, sometimes 15%, depending on what the red environment shows. So, and then we'll talk about the outward self, how others see you, but ultimately that comes full circle in the leader lens. So this is what we call the intensity chart. And these are the things that we're measuring. There's 4 primary areas that we look at that we're going to measure. And you can see from the circles are where my answers landed. The blue shaded areas, those are the adjectives used to describe me. There's a line that goes across the middle that's called the midline. And that determines really the amplitude of what that behavior is. The further away from the midline, the more pronounced those behaviors tend to be. The closer you are to the midline, the more flexible you are. So I'm not going to go into detail with those, but I'm going to show you what the PDP looks like. So as I mentioned, first we measure the behaviors. Most of the assessments have something like this. And even though PDP is extremely accurate, more accurate than the other assessments, the thing that I like about this not only is the accuracy of it, but it's what else we measure. Because we don't often talk about these things in the workplace. So put yourself as whether you're an entrepreneur or whether you're a supervisor or you're leading a small team, imagine learning these things about people. 1, technically it's 2, you've talked about the behaviors, but we also look at the logic. This is how people make decisions. So if you look above this midline, these are what we call the factual people. These are the people that need data. Below it are individuals that are more intuitive. Now, let me just say this, and I fall into the intuitive side. This doesn't mean that I don't like facts. It just means that I'm comfortable making decisions without them. Our intuitions isn't some magic 6th sense type of thing. It's really not. It comes from experiences. It comes from our schooling, education, things we've learned, OJT, on the job training, all of these things really pulls in to give us an intuition. So understanding when we have factual people and they work with me, like it's important to know who my factual people on my teams are, or from a client perspective, because if I have someone that's high fact-based and I'm giving them theory, they're going to want hard data. And so it's important for me to understand that if I have someone that's intuitive and I try to bury them with facts, they're going to get bored, uninterested. So this is a big key. If you're a salesperson, this is a big, big part of how you approach your targets, your clients, your prospects. The next thing that we look at is energy style. I prefer to call this a working style because there are 3. And I'm not going to turn this sideways so you can see them. But the interesting thing about this, like I'm high thrust. There's thrust, allegiance, and tenacity. By the way, tenacity is just a made up word. It stands for steadfast and tenacious. That's someone who has high power to get things going, to get things started. They get excited about new projects, but they also have the staying power to finish projects. The allegiance are individuals that certainly have to complete projects. They don't necessarily get excited about new projects like I do as a high thrust, but these are people that will absolutely, you will wreck their day if you pull them off of a project prematurely, if they didn't get to finish it. It'll be like kind of like that hanging thread that you can't pull all day, right? That's what high allegiance folks believe in. They want to finish. High thrust, I like to give the example. This time last year, it was the last day before the holidays, and I text my wife, like a good husband does. I text her to say, hey, I am about to leave the office. Do you want me to pick up anything on the way home? And she calls me, which she's a texter. She doesn't call. So I was like, uh-oh, better answer. So I said, hey, what's up? And she's like, hey, our toilet in their master bath is like constantly running. So I think we need one of those kits. So I said, no problem. I'm going to swing by Lowe's. I'll pick up a kit and I'll fix it when I get home. Now here's where the high thrust kicks in. Her immediate response to me was, do I need to be prepared to be without a master bath over the holidays, or are you actually going to finish it? That's high thrust. She's been married to me 24 years, and she knows that I love starting things, but I don't necessarily like ending them. So if you have high thrust people in your workplace, it is critically important to know who they are so you can help provide guardrails. I like to tease and say high thrust people tend to be high producers, successful people, but they're also the ones that get fired more frequently because if they don't have guardrails, boundaries, standards and structure built into their day-to-day, they're going to be all over the place. So, and I have left plenty of employees victim of that with my high thrust at times. But once again, it's about having the awareness of it. And then the last thing that we'll look at today is the energy levels from a kinetic perspective. I like to think of this as your inner horsepower, your battery. Essentially, it's your capacity. Okay. So when I look at this and I see, and by the way, when I am in workshops, I do not show the numbers because a 6 and a 7 isn't better than a 2 or a 3. It just means our capacity levels are different. Whereas I'm a high 5, zone 6, which means I have tons of capacity, but I also just shared with you that I don't have guardrails and boundaries. So from my perspective here, someone that's a 2 or a 3, they like to do 1 or 2 things at a time, complete it, and then move on. Where I want to just say, hey, give me more, give me more, give me more. And without that structure or those guardrails, I may not finish them. So that's why I don't show the numbers, because I don't want people immediately to look at that and go, oh my gosh, like I'm better than them. No, you're not. So now, and I'm going to pause for a quick second and just check and see if I totally forgot this was live. I don't know if there were any comments, and for some reason, comments aren't popping up. Let me see here. Give me a second real quick. Let's see. All right, we'll keep trucking. I see some, but I'm unable to pull them up. So hopefully StreamYard is getting this. If not, this will be on my laptop and we'll go ahead and replay this. So we're gonna keep rolling. All right, so I'm gonna share with you a sample LeaderLens. Okay, once again, QR code in the upper right hand corner if you want to see any of this data more regularly. That's for my newsletter. You'll get updated in emails with new content. But essentially, the LeaderLens starts with the PDP summary, which I just shared with you. Then it breaks it down into what are likely leadership gaps. Now, this is still somewhat general, but these are the high ticket items that we want to pay attention to. Now, this isn't a real person. This is a fictitious person. We'll just call him Ryan T. But we get through the leadership gaps. Then we have a personalized SWOT analysis that is developed. So it shows your strengths and weaknesses, your opportunities, and your threats. I can't imagine what is more important than something like this. Like, this is really giving you the blueprint to your people, or the blueprint to yourself. It's going to help you identify some of those blind spots, but it doesn't stop there. We provide a 90-day coaching blueprint, whether you want me to coach or someone in the organization that you're working with. Like, you have a template for what good looks like. And there's one last thing that I want to point your attention to down at the bottom. There are 3 categories, and these are off of the behavioral scorecard. Now, I'm not going to show the behavioral scorecard to you because that's internal to me, my organization. But essentially, you are grading yourself, and then your boss will grade you, and then your coach or trainer, or however that may be, will also grade you. And so we get your 3 lowest categories, and then we put together a program around those. Now, it's based on a scale of 1 to 5. And so then we start working through what are the coaching directions that need to take place. So it is a system of how we build and develop the 3 lowest categories, while understanding that you have some key strengths that we need to ensure that we are absolutely digging into. So from my perspective on this, when I look at this and how things are rolling, we take these really truly and bundle them all together and put together an operating program for the individual. Now, when you have a team, as we talk about a team lens, it pulls all of the team together, and then you're able to identify where are the holes and the gaps for us as a group. And so when you're looking to hire next level individuals, what we're having to do here is we're working through being able to identify what those shortcomings are and maybe where we need to hire. What are the behaviors that we're looking for in our next hire? Because maybe we don't have that on our team currently. So, getting here real quick, let me move one last thing. I wanted to keep this to 30 minutes or less. I think we're doing a good job there. Hopefully, everything is working out there. If it's not, we'll come back next week and we'll do it better. So, there are 2 bonus offers here. The first thing I'm going to talk about is if you would like a LeaderLens for 24 hours, I am going to offer 50% off for any organizations that want to do this. It's a limit of 2. So if you say, I got a team of 20, I want a LeaderLens, I'm not going to do that, but I'm going to give you a limit of 2, of 50% off. And then also I have a coaching cohort that's coming up in March, and it's going to be unbelievably amazing. And I'm looking for, hopefully we're going to have 7 to 10, but I'm going to offer the first 5 sponsors that come in, because if you are a leader that wants to put people in your organization, I'm going to give you 2 LeaderLens for free, in addition to the person that is in the cohort, because I think it's important that you start speaking the same language inside of the orbit. And I've got plenty of testimonials on these LeaderLens and the TeamLens to show you guys. But the last thing I will share with you is, get this out of the way, are the QR codes. So if you're interested in learning more about the cohort, you're going to click the QR code to the left. If you want to join the cohort, you're going to click it on the right. And then last, all of my contact information is here. If there's any questions that you have, and I'm going to try and pull up, I've got a ton of texts. My guess is that something's going on with the live. Let's see. Yeah, apparently it is. It says there are people talking, but they don't see me. So my guess is I will be publishing this as a replay. Haven't seen anything from Facebook yet, but maybe there are some connectivity errors. Let me look real quick. Let's see. Yeah, not sure. Nonetheless, we'll keep trucking. If you need more information, I'm going to get this posted. I am certainly looking forward to seeing everyone, and I will post this later, and we'll talk soon.